been filming skiing for nearly 5 years now, and for 3 of those years I've used Insta360 products as my primary action camera. So for any of you who currently shoot on these cameras or are just starting to film your riding, I thought it could be helpful to go over my preferred shooting settings, how I reframe my shots, and some of the crucial tips and tricks I've picked up over the years. Hit me up in the comment section down below if you have any questions throughout the video, but let's get on with it. As a lot of you guys know, I've been using the Insta360 X4 as my main driver since it was released. Over the years, I've grown to prefer a 360-degree action camera for my main POV angle because they capture the widest field of view out of any camera on the entire market. I mean, as a ski creator, you're always trying to minimize that screen barrier. You want your audience to feel fully immersed in your footage. And I think 360 action cams like the X3 or X4 do an absolutely fantastic job of this by capturing the entirety of the foreground in front of you while also capturing your skis below you.
Oh, that's it! Yay, dude! Ah!
Everything, of course, still comes down to personal preference, but in my opinion, 360 cameras still produce the most immersive shot.
Oh!
If you want to know more specifics about the X4, I made a full skiing-focused review on the camera, which I'll link below, but for now, let's go over my ideal shooting settings with this unit. The X4 is capable of shooting at a bunch of different frame rates and resolutions, but 99% of the time I'll be shooting at 5.7K at 60 frames per second. 5.7K captures more than enough detail when filming videos for long-form platforms like YouTube and retains its quality when that same piece of footage is cropped in for short-form content on Instagram and TikTok. While the X4 is capable of shooting at 8K, there really isn't much of a need for those extra pixels unless your goal is to maximize the detail in your shot or you're planning to significantly crop in on the image post-production. The reason I always shoot at 60 FPS is because 1, it creates a smoother image, which once again helps make the shot feel more immersive, and 2, it does give me the flexibility to slow down the image post-production without significantly sacrificing the frame rate. Next up, let's talk shutter speed, ISO, exposure, and white balance. Unless you're a videography wizard and riding in an environment where the lighting and conditions are static, which is, obviously extremely rare in the case of skiing, keep all these settings on auto. During the entire time I've owned the X4, I've never once manually adjusted any of these settings, as the camera itself does a pretty decent job adjusting to high and low light environments on its own.
Hold the knife!
For color profiles, you have 3 different options: standard, vivid, and flat. I always keep it on standard, but in the case you prefer to color grade all your footage, I'd recommend using the flat profile. There's 2 more things you'll want to change. Head over to image settings and change the bitrate to high to maximize the footage file's quality, and go ahead and turn sharpness on low to make the image look a bit more natural.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, and for your field of view, feel free to choose any option, as you'll be able to change this when you're editing the footage. A massive plus with these cameras, but we'll come back to this later. Now, video-wise, those are all the settings I tinker with, but video is just half the battle. The difference between good and great ski content is your video's audio quality.
Barry had a little lamb. Barry had a little lamb.
I've battled with this issue for a long time, as a good chunk of my videos require me to commentate my skiing or the skiing in front of me. Good audio quality from any action camera isn't difficult to achieve when you're hitting a tame run through some trees, but when you're cruising around 100 kilometers an hour in a barren valley, this becomes much harder to achieve.
Yeah, it's real slow.
Hands down, the biggest tip I can give you for better audio quality is throwing on some dead cats or a wind muff on top of the mics on the X4, and then switching your audio setting to stereo. This setup will allow you to record a legible conversation with yourself or other people while you're flying 60-odd miles down a piece.
Maybe 80 now. Oh my god.
There's a ton of different dead cat and wind muff options all over the internet, but Insta360 does make a dedicated wind muff for the X4. I've been using these over the last year and they've held up great. And again, make sure you do change that audio setting to stereo while you're using these, as any of the wind reduction options can interfere with what the wind muff is already achieving. Now that you've shot your footage and recorded your audio, let's talk about where these cameras give you a ton of flexibility: their post-production software. You can use both your computer and your phone to edit up your 360 footage. I'll go over both and explain the easiest and most in-depth ways to edit and reframe your shots. Once you download the software from Insta360's website, open her up and it'll look something like this. All the shots on your SD card will be on the left, and the shot you're looking to edit and reframe will be dead set in the middle. Now there's three massive things I want to cover here: how to properly reframe your shots and how to choose the right field of view, how to spice up your clips with keyframe cropping and transitions, and lastly, how to make your footage more engaging with data and After Effects. Kicking it off with reframing. One of the biggest benefits of shooting with a 360 camera is you never have to stress about positioning the camera correctly. You can simply hit the record button, ski your line, and then reframe your ideal shot in their software. Once you've loaded up your piece of footage, scroll over to where you want your clip to start and click this plus button to create your first keyframe. You'll see a new menu that opens up your world to a ton of different options. There's a handful of different FOVs to choose from, like Tiny Planet, Mega View, and D-Warp. You can also see the numbers which correspond to the coordinates of where your camera angle is currently positioned. For example, it states your pan angle in your FOV control. Here you can input different numbers to change the camera's position, or you can just do this simply by dragging the image around with your mouse. Now, all of this will come down to personal preference, but over the 3 years that I've used this software, my all-time favorite combination for a YouTube video, which uses a 16:9 aspect ratio, is to use the D-Warp field of view with my FOV control set in between the 130 to 160 range, depending on what camera mount I'm using and what the terrain looks like. Regardless if my shot is using a selfie stick mount or a helmet mount, a chest mount, I've always preferred the D-Warp FOV as it eliminates that warp fisheye effect that you'll see in some 360 cameras. That's not to say I never use other field of view options. I'll often make use of Tiny Planet at the start of a shot to help introduce my audience to the terrain I'm about to ski. And I'm also a huge fan of using the Ultra FOV for creating 9:16 short form content.
Oh, that was better. Definitely better.
Once we have our first keyframe and our preferred FOV chosen, it's time to start adding in more keyframes until we have a full clip. Now, it is so easy to rush through this process, but I cannot stress it enough. Take your time here. This is the part of the editing process that will define a good piece of content from a great one. Change up your angles throughout your shot, focus on different subjects during your line. I mean, something as simple as zooming in slightly on your skis when you're banking a turn can add a whole new dynamic to your shot versus just leaving the angle flat. For example, here's a finalized clip of me blasting down one of my favorite laps at Red Mountain. In it, you'll notice a bunch of subtle angle changes, zooms, and transitions to help make the footage feel more dynamic. Again, I want the viewer to feel immersed in the clip. Now compare that same footage, but without all those dynamic elements. This is what you'd be left with. Again, this is all subjective, but I would imagine the vast majority of you guys would prefer option 1. Now, editing-wise, what's the difference between the two? A whole lot of keyframes and intentional transition choices. You'll see in option 1, I started out with a Tiny Planet view to introduce my audience to the terrain all around me and connected that to a D-Warp keyframe. At each turn of my skis, you'll see I introduce another keyframe at a slightly different angle to make the viewer feel like they're turning with me. When a tree sprout is introduced into the shot and I need to jump over it, I zoom in slightly on the footage and pivot the angle to make the viewer feel like they're popping over it with me. All of these subtle dynamic changes once again drives the immersiveness and engagement of your clips. But be careful with this as well. You can overdo it and give yourself some proper nausea. Now, there's also the case you might not care about any of this discretion at all and you just want a simple solution to reframing your 360 footage. If that's you, click on the deep track option, choose the subject you want the clip to focus on, and the software will automatically reframe your footage with your subject set. Okay, this next part is crucial. You see all those small yellow lines connecting your keyframes? Click on one of them and another menu will pop up that lets you choose different transition styles between your keyframes. If you're looking for a very dynamic shot with quick, fast angle changes, use the fade in and fade out. But if you want your frames to blend together, use the smooth dissolve option. To give you an example of how drastically these transition choices can change up your clip, here's the same video, but one only uses the fade in and fade out transition while the other uses smooth dissolve.
Yes, sir, baby! Somebody built the jump over here, so let's crescent it with the only trick I know how to do. Yes, sir, baby!
lastly, let's talk data in After Effects. Insta360's software gives you the conventional editing tools like changing your brightness and saturation, but it also has this thing called Motion ND built into the software. What this does is introduce motion blur into your clip to help give viewers a better sense of speed when watching your footage. It's pretty good when you subtly use it in a POV shot, but where it really excels is when the subject in focus is centered and far away, which is the case in selfie stick shots. And to further drive engagement and help build on your content's narrative, the X4 is also able to connect with your Apple Watch or Garmin device to capture data like speed, acceleration, and elevation. You can also purchase a GPS preview remote from Insta360 that performs the same function if you don't have one of these devices. I'll often throw my speed on a lot of different clips to help make the video more engaging and give more context to the viewer. The moral of the story here is take that sweet time to utilize all the tools available in this software to help add that little bit of spice in your clips that the social media algorithms are looking for. Now, even though I spend most of my time using Insta360 Studio to edit my videos, I'll often use their mobile app in the case I want to quickly reframe one of my shots. There's 3 different reframing options on the app. You have AI, Quick, and Pro. AI is the quickest way to reframe your footage, but it also gives you the least amount of discretion. The app will automatically analyze your entire footage file, piece together highlight moments, and add other elements like background music, all within a few seconds. After the AI edit is complete, you can go ahead and add some of your own spice into it by deleting any clips you'd like, swap out some of the music, and a whole bunch of other options. Quick mode gives you some more discretion by allowing you to reframe your footage in real time with the on-screen joystick or by simply moving your device around, which is actually pretty cool. It also makes use of that deep track tool where you can choose your subject and then the app will automatically reframe your entire clip, keeping the subject centered. And lastly, if you're looking for the most amount of discretion over reframing your clips, Pro mode is for you. Like the desktop software, in this mode you can add as many keyframes as you would like into your shot. This is usually my go-to mode on the app just because I do like having full control over what my clip looks like. The app also has a bunch of other creative features that aren't included in the desktop software like Shot Lab. Over here you can play around with features like AI Warp and Sky Swap. I don't find myself using them too often, but it is kind of cool to see how far technology has come. And there you go, man. That's how I've filmed and edited all my 360 videos over the last 3 years. Again, if you got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below, and I'll try my best to provide you with a half-decent answer.